David, you just shared with us some wonderful concrete examples of exercises by which you can create space for young people to engage in practices of discernment. If we had a bunch of youth ministers here and you wanted them to go away with one idea, what's the most important thing you think they ought to keep in mind when they go off to facilitate this kind of an exercise?
Let me answer with a story. And it's the story I told in the session about my work with YTI, the Youth Theological Initiative at Emory. At Emory, we hosted a 4-week residential community for rising high school seniors. It was a very rich program that included theological study, worship, immersion, mission work in the community, lots of young people playing games and recreation and talking, and it was a very rich program. But in the midst of that program, for many summers, we had a research component where we invited a number of young people, 30 or so, to meet with a researcher, which was me at that time, for about an hour and a half at some point during the month. And so they would come to me, and I had some questions that I asked them, mostly about their lives and their vision for the future and their own strengths and gifts and their own faith, and just listen to them for an hour and a half. And we were surprised after a few years when we began collecting and compiling the evaluations, when we asked young people what they valued the most in the summer experience over 4 weeks. We thought it would be, studying BART or immersion experience or playing volleyball, or we didn't know what it would be, but we didn't think it would be the hour and a half that they spent with a researcher. And what we learned from that is that it's a very valuable time. Very seldom do young people have the undivided attention of adults for any length of time. And so we observed that listening alone constituted a healing practice. And so, and I'm remembering, not only is that true for young people, but I remember working with a congregation where this storytelling process was happening over a period of months and months, and the young people would come in from week to week and tell stories, and we would post paintings and pictures on the wall to illustrate the themes. And at the end of that time, the adults who were sponsoring, youth sponsors for this group, came to me and said, we have to confess that we have fallen in love with these young people. And there had been kind of a mutual conversion. The adults had listened to these young people, and their hearts had been broken on behalf of these young people. And similarly, the young people said, we've never had adults around us who paid this much attention and who cared this much about our lives. So simply creating space where young people can tell you about themselves is valuable, but it's not only valuable as a sense of providing a sense of presence and care, but it also is healing because we observe that it's a context in which young people, as they respond to your questions, they begin constructing a narrative for their life that plays an enormous role in their sense of identity. And so as they're telling their stories, they'll tell you about their past and what they were good at as a child, the sparks that kind of drew them to the church, and how they see that projected into the future. And we catch them in the act of constructing a narrative for their life. And in essence, an emerging sense of vocation. So I would just say to youth workers to find ways of creating that kind of space. It doesn't have to be formal. It can be informal. I know one friend who had a program in his youth group. He called it Coke and a Smile. And once a week, they had a drawing at youth group. They put names in a hat and drew the name of one young person that he would go and have a Coke with one afternoon and just listen ask them questions, just listen, learn about them. So there are lots of ways to do it informally and formally.